and you can be extreme with it at other areas. Hello guys, it's Unders. I hope the day is finding you well. What we're going to do here is a deep dive into the new hybrid synth from Initial Audio called Sektor. So what I've got loaded up here is just a really simple project, 4 different sounds, a couple of presets and a couple I made in Sektor, and just a drum loop which just built this. Just to test out some of the different features and things going on inside it. And what we're going to do is just grab a couple of the sounds and just break them down and look at how we can configure these in Sektor. So the individual sounds are these. And notice they all sound pretty pure and pretty clean, which is kind of surprising. I was expecting to maybe hear quite a bit of aliasing, because at the end of the day, this is a pretty budget synth. It's on for about 50 quid at the minute, which is pretty awesome. So let's go with the first one here, which is, it was a preset and then I've tweaked the preset a little bit. So if we look at the plugin itself, it's got kind of an unusual layout in that the first thing you come across is the sub oscillator. So normally you'd expect to find your oscillators and maybe moving on to like adding the sub later in, or routing it into one of the oscillators, or even having a direct out, something like that. But on here, it's the first thing you come across. So you can either have it on or off, quite simple, and then you've got octave. You can go up 4 octaves, down 4 octaves, just leave it on 0. On this particular sound, it was fine where it was. It's nice that you can pitch it separately to everything else. So even though it's a sub oscillator, it's not just automatically going like 1 octave below everything else. You can choose where it's going to be. You'll notice on some, you'll activate a sub oscillator and it will just be 1 octave below whatever notes you're playing, which isn't necessarily what you're after. So being able to move it, good touch. You can choose where that's sent as well, whether it's sent to filter 1, filter 2, or a blend of the two, which is a nice little touch. And you've obviously got the level out as well as the drive. The drive just adds some extra harmonics. It is just a single sine wave. When you push this drive right up, it distorts it, adds some extra harmonics. Nothing real special. Now the next thing you come across on the right is something that doesn't really make sense. And this is where the hybrid sort of part of this comes in. Here you're going to pick a sample set. So the way this is working, it takes a sample set and then it's got the 2 wavetables. So this has got the Anthem sample set on it, and you can just click either way and choose what it's going to be. If you click on it, you've got the factory library. You can go samples and multi-samples. And honestly, there's a whole bunch in here that you can go through. I've got Heat Up 2 installed as well, and because that's from the same company, you can choose those sample sets as well, which is a nice touch, just having a little bit of the ability to go between the two there. So those sample sets that are available in Heat Up, I can actually bring into this synth as well and mess around with. We've then got color. Now, color's kind of odd. You have to activate it in this little joint section here, but essentially what it is, well, I was going to tell you here, the bandpass filter, which is going to narrow the frequency out, and similar to how you'd find color on a distortion unit, and then it's going to give you that key area that it works on, but it does nothing unless you activate this switch. It's kind of weird that they're so separated, but a key tracking applies to the filter. Loop is whether or not it's going to loop those sample sets, and then you can pitch these up and down or detune them, if you will, as well. So that technically really is your main oscillator, and then we've actually got oscillator A and oscillator B, which are wavetables. These guys are super powerful. and what we'll do, we'll dip into those a little bit when we go onto the sub in just a second. So main window here is our browser for patches more than anything. If we click on factory, we get ARPs, bass, all the normal things that you'd expect, and within each one there's I don't know, about 100 or so patches, which is pretty damn awesome. Some of these are already starred. I don't know why I didn't like highlight any of them. I don't actually know how just yet, but there's just a whole bunch of different ones in there, which is amazing. And the browsers one we were using is just under brass, and it's the second one down. Up at the top we've got 3 macro links. So ever used, massive, and that's got its 6 macro knobs right at the bottom corner, hasn't it? It's similar thing here. You can link multiple things to these macro controls and have them all controlled at once. Moving over to the master, it's got another drive section. It sounds like it's the same drive section as what's on the sub, just literally pushes in and seems to add some odd and even harmonics. And then the overall level, this guy's a little bit sensitive. Like if we have it maxed, it's plus 6 dB, but if you literally only pull it back the tiniest amount, like it's already minus 3 dB, and it ends up going like a full minus 96. So like yeah, it's mad. Like anything past sort of 70%, it's just not really necessary, but is what it is. So if you want it to be on 0, it's actually like all the way up. It's super sensitive, a little bit strange, but hey. So we keep coming around here. We've got our filter section. Pretty simple: low pass, high pass, band pass, and notch. There's actually 2 filters, so we've got 1 and 2. If we select 2, it changes to our next filter, and that's obviously relevant to here where we had the filter 2, where 1 and 2 for the sub-os. So you could keep filter 2 off, for example, push the sub-oscillator into filter 2, and it will go out clean, rather than, it's sort of like making your own direct out that way. And save having 2 filter windows, we've just got this button here to switch between the 2, and it's pretty obvious which one we've got highlighted. Coming down here, we've got our envelope. Is literally only applies to the output. So it's our main out envelope. All it applies to, main volume. Now, if we just go and grab the sub sound here, and we'll grab the sub. Now, where I was saying these are pretty interesting, notice on this version here, I've got no sample set loaded. I've just used this oscillator here. We've just got that distorted sub sound. Hopefully you guys can hear that. If not, you'll need to put a good set of headphones on, like laptop speakers things. Probably not going to play too much. The thing that's really impressed me the most is just how deep the wavetable editor really goes, and that's what we're going to look at here. So if you highlight your wavetable, you can obviously scan between different ones, as you'd expect in let's say any wavetable synth that's modernly come out, that this might be a representation of. If we get into edit, we get a really great wavetable editor that's got this interesting grid system in it. So you've got a whole different set here of frames of a wave, which is super useful. Like you can have a noise frame, and you could do that, and it's going to just add noise just there, and you can change the amplitude and phase of it, so you can just make a like noisy bit on the wave, really fuzz it up, which is pretty awesome. Like I love that, and that's a really great way to get like an analog type sound. You hear what it's doing there, and you can be extreme with it at other areas. So you can have your nice clean wave, and then really mess it up and give it a real fuzzy, badly recorded sound, which is, that's pretty sick to have in there. Now, moreover, notice here that I've just created a single sine wave. If we were to grab the same waveframe here and do this, it's not going to work. And at first, I found this pretty confusing. However, it works on this grid system here. We've got it set 8x8. However, if we click and drag, and we can do 1x1, we can actually then just go straight back to our sine wave. Now, that might not seem that impressive. However, if we were to go 2x2 and do the same frame, we can move it up an octave. again, if we were to go 4/4, we can move it up again as well. And we can create slightly more complex waves as well. We can pump that all the way up to 64 and just go like absolutely insane, creating these distorted digital waves. And it's just a really simple way to create these complex wavetables, which I just thought was pretty cool. And then the fact that you can actually drive it as well. And notice how the drive distorts it. Equally, you can normalize it. If, say, everything was a bit low, you can just normalize and it'll just bring it up in level. Move DC offset for anything that's off where it should be. You've instantly got this completely custom sound. But then if I want to do something as simple as a sine, bring it all the way back down to the 1/1, drop our sine in. Done. Easy as. Distort our sine wave. And we get the actual distortion of a sine wave. Now, once we've distorted it, we bring it all the way back. It holds that distortion as well. Because we've actually created a new wave, and then we could dirty it up as well. So I could just spend forever in this creating absolutely insane wavetables. And then the fact that we can morph between a whole different amount as well. So yeah, I was overly impressed with that. It goes incredibly deep. So once you've made whatever you want, you can just leave it in there, close it out, and we'll be back to the same default settings here. Now, if we grab the 80804 one that we did, I've added some automation and modulators in this one. Let's pump this up an octave so it's a bit easier for you guys to hit. Cool, so as you can see on the drive and resonance over here, there's some really fast, rapid automation happening. And I just wanted to push that and see how well it responded and if it didn't just fall apart, and it's worked pretty solidly. And there's a huge scope for modulating this as well. Any knob, you can literally right click on it, go to modulation source and choose its modulation source. You can add multiple sources as well. So you see where we've got all these LFOs, mod envelopes, etc. They're all listed across the bottom, where by default it's the keys. We've then got ADSR 1 and 2. We've got a set of mod envelopes 1 and 2 and 3, and then we've got LFO 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just a huge amount of different things to be able to link into. And we've also got modulation matrix to just quickly have a look and adjust the amounts of everything. On top of that, they're all bipolar as well. So if we go into 1 and 2 here, I can reverse what's going on with the drive. Nice and easy. I can reverse what's going on with the resonance. Something else I've made use of in here as well is there is this stereo spread amount. Explains exactly what it's doing there. So spread the oscillator voices through the stereo field. And it requires the oscillator voices to be set to more than one voice to have an effect. But as long as they are set to more than one voice, you can get quite a nice spread out of them. And you'll notice here it's set to 4 voices. If we really spread it out and we max the voices out, yeah, it's giving them quite a nice spread. If we add a bit of detune, it'll become super prevalent. And just about everything works as simply as that. If we, I don't know, let's just say we want to add some level change to here, we can just right click, we can do ADSR 1. And we can now have this level working on the ADSR. So we go to ADSR 1 and 2 at the bottom. And we can have this applied. And you see by default, it's applied fully. And you get a readout as well. You can see here the readout on the ADSR. And we can bipolar it and have it run backwards as well. So if we want to take a while for that sound to come in, just boost the attack up. If we don't want it to sustain, we want it to decay straight away. And it doesn't fall over on really rapid settings either. Still keeps nice and clear, which is good. One of the things that really did surprise me about it. So overall, pretty solid investment, I'd say. I'm pretty impressed with it. Now, the one last thing we want to have a look at, if we open this little cave killer guy, we've got some effects and a built-in arpeggiator, even though I've added an ARP here in Logic. So if we look at the main browser again, we've got this oscillator plus section. So we can edit and detune and do the stereo in a grid section per voice, if we so desire. There's also a sequencer built in. So if we want to arpeggiate a sound, we can actually just build that directly in here. So if we just hold a longer note in here, we just need to activate the ARP. So you can program pretty complex ARPs in there. If we go into factory, go into the top one, open up any of these, they by default will have arpeggiator sections sequenced in, and you can actually just flick through them here at the bottom, which is a nice touch. So it's a pretty useful built-in feature. And then effects-wise, we've got a nice stack of effects, which can be completely moved in order as well. They're all relatively standard, but they do exactly what you're after. One of the more unique ones is a trance gate, which exists in many different plugins, but seldom in its own synth. But the fact that you could just drop that right at the end, it can help add a whole new set of feel to a sound. If we add a whole bunch of steps, we can fade it out. Pretty cool little touch in there. And then last but not least is settings. So you can change to a degree how you want it to look. I quite like this dark setting because it all matches in with Logic. What we can do is choose different ones here, and it will change the GUI to something you like and is maybe a bit more comfortable for you, which again, nice little touch, not something that you have to have at all, but we're going to go signature black because that's what I'm liking. And that is essentially it, guys. That's a little deep dive through Sektor, just showing the different things we can do and that it doesn't fall apart like most 50 quid synths do. It's a nice little powerhouse. I'm going to be making use of it a lot. I really like how clear and active and enjoyable it is to work with. Cool. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope the video was helpful for you, and I will see you on the next one.